Keeper of the Lost Cities, Neverseen, Chapter 26. Don't scream, a deep voice told Sophie as she passed through the breakfast area on her way for another early morning river walk. Of course she screamed, but who wouldn't scream if they found a strange figure lurking in the shadows, especially if that figure happened to look like a giant two-legged poodle? Curly white fur covered his body, leaving only his dark blue eyes and pink lips exposed. Who are you? She whispered. The poodle figure rubbed his furry arms. Apparently my code name is Coif. I hope that means you're part of the Black Swan, Sophie said. Would I be here if I weren't? He stepped closer and she backed up. If I meant to harm you, Sophie, I would have grabbed you when you entered the gazebo. I had plenty of time and I'm much stronger than you. Is that supposed to reassure me? Yes. He scratched his shoulder, then his chest, then his arms and legs. Ugh, I swear I've picked up itchites in this infernal fur. Itchites? Sophie asked. A type of insect that feeds on unicorn blood. He leaned against the posts of the gazebo, rubbing his back like a bear scratching on a tree. My involvement with the Black Swan is usually more hands-off, but today I must play babysitter, so I get to be this. He waved his hands at his fur before going back to scratching, and Sophie got a feeling she wasn't going to be a fan of Coif. Sophie? Dick shouted, racing down the stairs two at a time. Are you okay? I heard you scream. Fitz and Biana were right behind him, with Keith a few steps further back. They froze when they spotted Coif. Is this guy bothering you? Fitz asked. Is that a guy? Dex added. He says he's with the Black Swan, Sophie told them. Couldn't anyone say that? Fitz asked. Coif rolled his eyes and pulled a monocle pendant like theirs out of the curls of his fur. Happy now? Just when I thought this place couldn't get any weirder, Biana mumbled. Dex moved closer to Coif and squinted at his fur. What'd you do, mix a bunch of curly dew with macho and a couple drops of body warmer? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if your father's ridiculous store was involved, Coif muttered. Only Kessler Disney would waste enough time to figure out how to give someone a fur coat. Yeah, Sophie definitely wasn't going to be a fan of Coif. My father's one of the most talented alchemists in our world, Dex snapped. He is, Coif agreed, but even you must admit he gravitates towards the absurd. That's intentional, Sophie told him. Kessler kept slurps and burps strange to make the stuck-up nobility uncomfortable. So, wait, Keith jumped in. Are you naked right now? Because I think I speak for everyone when I say, yuck. Sophie smiled, relieved to see Keith acting more like his old self. Shadows still darkened his eyes, but his smirk had returned with full force. If you must know, Coif snapped, I'm wearing a bathing suit under all this. You try wearing 10 pounds of fur and see if you feel like putting a coat on top of it, especially with the way it tugs. And shouldn't there be more of you? I was told there would be 6. There are. Della appeared next to him. He scrambled back, tripping over the black bags piled at his feet. Ms. Vecker, how ironic to see you among our ranks, considering the task we are about to perform. And what task would that be? Della asked, not bothering to correct her name. Isn't it obvious? He tossed them each one of the black bundles. Get dressed. It's time to see if you're talented enough to break into exile. This isn't the desert, Sophie said, as they reappeared in a forest high in the mountains. How astute of you, Coif told her, leading them up a narrow path. A thin layer of snow had turned the mountain gray and crunchy, and Sophie snuggled deeper into her dark cloak, glad the heavy fabric was extra warm. Question, Keith said, after they'd climbed for several minutes. Why do all the trees look like they want to eat us? He wasn't wrong. The gnarled, bulbous trunks reached for them with claws. Branched hands and the knots in the wood looked like eyes. Sophie checked each one, squinting as far into the distance as she could, wondering if she'd find one with a force field. You okay? Dex asked, as Sophie tripped over the edge of her heavy cloak. Yeah, I just wish this thing fit better. Tell me about it. His sleeves completely covered his hands. Are you sure this is the right way? She asked Coif as the forest thinned around them. Last time we entered exile through a sand pit. And last time you had permission to be there, Coif reminded her. Do you really think we can walk in the main entrance? No, but it's hard to know what's happening when no one's told us the plan, she snapped. That was not my decision. They passed several more trees before Coif doubled back. Finally, he said, tracing his furry fingers down a sun-bleached trunk. It takes a keen eye to find the trail. Yeah, well, did those keen eyes of yours also see you just stepped in a big pile of Sasquatch poop? Keith asked. Coif muttered something about the black swan testing his patience as he attempted to scrape the furry foot clean. Then he led them west, counting 8 trees before he turned north, and counting 4 more. Then repeating the process through several more twists and turns until they reached a tree on the edge of the slope. It wasn't the biggest tree they'd seen, but Sophie could tell it was ancient. Its curled branches stretched towards the clouds, daring a storm to take it down. Coif knocked on the lumpy trunk, making 5 quick taps, 2 soft pats, and 7 slaps in a strange rhythm. And now, he said, I'm free of further responsibility. You're leaving? Fitz asked, as Coif pulled a crystal pendant from his tangled fur. Coif laughed. Surely the champions of the Everest ambush have no reason to fear an empty forest. Though, it doesn't feel empty, does it? Better hope whatever's nearby isn't hungry. He's kidding, right? Bianna asked, as Coif glittered away. I'm sure he is, Della said, but she scanned the forest carefully. The black swan needs a better screening process for their helpers, Dex decided. Sophie tucked her hands into her cloak pockets to keep them warm, and her fingers grazed the edge of Kenrick's cache. She'd figured that breaking into the world's most secure prison was the kind of place where it might be smart to have a powerful bargaining chip. Anyone have any theories on where we are? Fitz asked. I'm guessing somewhere human, since I don't see any pures. The pures were palm-like trees with fan-shaped leaves that filtered any pollutants out of the air. Every elven city and manor had at least one. Sophie hoped they were in the neutral territories and continued scanning the forest for any trace of cyanopath. But something about the trees Coif had chosen felt familiar, and after a moment, she remembered what she'd seen. I think we're in California, she said, and one of these trees, maybe even this one, is the Methuselah. Humans think it's the oldest living thing on the planet, but clearly they've never met Bronte. Ha! Good one, Foster, Keith told her. How old is the Miss Yuza What a Tree? Methuselah, Sophie corrected, and something like 4,700 years. Fitz whistled. That might be older than Bronte, but not older than Fallon Vacker, our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. He's one of the 3 founding members of the council, and served for about 1,000 years, before he fell in love with my great-great-great-great, yeah, your really old grandma. Dex interrupted. We get it. You guys have a lot of super old, super important relatives. Whoop-de-doo. The Vacker legacy is one of a kind, Fitz snapped back. Why is that? Sophie asked, making Dex grin. I mean, I know the Vackers are legendary, but what I don't get is, if all elves have the indefinite lifespan, doesn't everyone have a bunch of super old, super important, pointy-eared relatives? Ancient, yes, Della agreed. But as Fitz said, the original council was only 3 members, and they added emissaries much later. So, for a long time, we only had a handful of elves that were classified as nobility. Hence the Vacker legacy. It can be quite intimidating, actually. That's why I initially rejected your father's advances. I wasn't sure I wanted that kind of scrutiny. Ugh, can we please not talk about you and Dad and advances? Fitz asked. Seriously, Bianna agreed. You mean you don't want me to tell you about the first time your father kissed me? Della teased, laughing as she pulled her children into a squirmy hug. Keith looked away. So, Sophie said, changing the subject for him, do you think the tree is supposed to do something? We've been standing here for a pretty long time and nothing's happened. That's because you haven't been paying attention, Calla said, leaping from the top branches and landing gracefully on her toes. Looks like those old bones still have some spring in them, another gnome said, emerging from among the trees and roots. It took Sophie a second to recognize her as Amisi, the other gnome who lived in a Louveterre. Sorry we couldn't bring you here ourselves, Calla told them. It took longer than we expected to gather the others. Others? Sophie asked. 4 gnomes Sophie didn't recognize appeared among the branches. What are we doing here? Della asked, as the newest gnomes leaped to the ground. Waiting for us. They spun around to find Mr. Forkle and Squall marching up behind them. Wraith appeared soon after, followed by Blur. Granite arrived a few moments after. Sorry I'm late. King Enki was still perfecting the carvings. He held up 6 sleek black pendants, cut with jagged facets. Megsidian. Only dwarves could mine the rare mineral, and the dwarven guards in exile could sense its presence, or lack thereof, and determine if someone had permission to be there. The stone also changed its power depending on how it had been cut. Sophie had seen it draw water from the air, affect the pole of the compass, and create special beams of light, but she'd never seen Megsidian cut so sharply. Granite passed the pendants to Sophie, Fitz, Dex, Keith, Biana, and Della. You guys don't need them? Sophie asked, noting that the collective members also weren't wearing heavy cloaks. We have other protection, Mr. Forkle said. Has everyone been introduced? Sorry, I got distracted, Calla said. This is Briar, Chloris, Neverseen, and Verid. I thought we needed 9, Granite said. Calla twiddled her thumbs. This was the best I could gather. After what happened in the Sixtine Plains... What happened in the Styxian Plains? Sophie interrupted. That's another neutral territory, isn't it? Della added. Yes, Mr. Forkle said, through a sigh that made his shoulders slump. It's where a family of gnomes recently contracted the plague. We thought it would be best to inform you after today's mission, Granite said, when they all shouted, What? We needed to make sure your minds were focused, Wraith added. So you've been lying to us, Dex asked. Not lying, withholding, Mr. Forkle corrected, and you're overestimating the gravity of this news. Only 1 more family of gnomes has been added to the quarantine in Luminaria. Yeah, but that means the plague is spreading, Sophie argued. That's how it turns into a full-fledged outbreak. And that's what many of the gnomes I spoke to today feared as well, Calla whispered. Mr. Forkle rubbed his temples. I do not have to check your thoughts to know you're angry with me, Miss Foster, and I understand everyone's worries. But chasing clues about this plague is like chasing the wind. The only way to gain control is to get ahead of it, which is something we are working on. In the meantime, we can't ignore the other important matters, like what we're here to achieve. We know Prentice is hiding something. Perhaps it relates to some of these problems, but even if it doesn't, we're freeing him today. All our surveillance indicates that this is our best chance. A group of additional dwarven guards arrives tomorrow, so please set your emotions aside and prepare yourselves for the mission. He turned to Calla. The 6 of you can hold the tunnel? Our voices are strong, she agreed. The gnomes spread out, forming a circle around the old tree as they sang a slow song. The tree swayed its roots, twisting and tightening. Dirt, rock, and debris were swept aside until a burrow-like opening appeared. Verid will keep the exit open, Cal told them, as all but 1 gnome scurried into the dark tunnel. The collective followed the gnomes. Sophie glanced at her friends, wondering how they felt about risking their lives when the collective had just admitted to lying to them. Come on, Fitz said. Let's go get Prentice.